Sup, ladies and gentlemen, Akulon here, and welcome back to each one of you. Of course, if you are new to the channel, thank you so much for joining us. I am very happy to have you here. Before we get into the video, there is a small matter of my fee. Of course, nothing is free in this world, and your fee to watch this video is slapping the like button. You know when your mom calls you down when you're in the middle of a raid and you're like, Mom, I'm fucking 30. I can just raid. I don't need to eat right now. You know that when you're slapping your desk? That's what I want you to do to the like button. Spank that little motherfucker. That's all I charge for these videos. Let's go. Now, of course, New World launched to the anticipation, or at least was announced to the anticipation of millions of people. These days, the MMO industry is such a mess that whenever a new MMO is announced, people instantly flock to it and go, Savior, this is the one. This is Jesus coming, right? This is everything. This is what we need. And then people are consistently let down by the fact that they did not pay attention to what was happening in the game prior, because everyone wants a good MMO, and it feels like the MMO industry has, for the most part, really grinded to a halt in terms of changing the landscape, pushing the genre forward, doing things outside of the norm. So in this video, we are going to be discussing a lot of the philosophical decisions that has been made around New World from the developer side, what they wanted versus what ultimately happened, right? So basically how it started versus how it's going, sort of thing. We're going to talk about some of my fears with even some of the newest announcements, and of course we're going to start off talking about the cash up. However, before we get into the actual video, allow me to tell you about something that will not make you angry, that will be amazing, that won't leave you wanting to slap your desk. I am, of course, talking about the sponsor for today's video, Skillshare. In many ways, Skillshare really is an MMO. You join millions of other people around the world learning about the hobbies and skills that you wish to develop. You don't have to wait for your boss to send you on some course that's boring and no one really cares about it. Just log on to Skillshare and learn whatever it is that you want to learn. Photography, videography, literally gardening, chef skills. I've been watching a lot of courses on chef knife skills and chef skills in general and finding it extremely helpful because Skillshare is optimized for learning. Every class is built in such a way that while you're going through it, you're actually learning because they took the time to figure out how do you teach people the optimal amount of information in the shortest amount of time. So it's not going to take a lot of your time, but it is going to be extremely helpful. So literally for less than $10 a month on an annual subscription, you gain access to the world and all of its knowledge. So you can join millions of other people just learning. Right now, for example, I am learning about YouTube success. As you can see, I don't have a lot of subscribers, so I kind of need the class, right? It is presented by Sorrel Moore. Build an authentic channel that's worth the follow, and that's always been my goal. My goal has always been to build community. So this video really digs into it, getting that credibility, gaining your audience, making sure that you're worth the follow that they give you. All of that is so extremely important, and I love this class, and you can learn about this and so much else. Now, the people over at Skillshare are so amazing that they said, you know what? You don't have to drop the money. For the first 1,000 people that click the link in the description down below, they will give a free premium membership trial to try it out and see if it is for you. So ladies and gentlemen, do not delay. Click the link, help yourself, and help the channel. What do you have to lose? All right, back to New World. And of course, as most of you should know, if you've been following the product and the service for quite some time, they just released their May alpha update, well, actually on the 12th of May, and it's sort of starting to pave the way for the closed beta. Now, I am going to be playing the closed beta. I did buy the game, so at that point, I would be able to give you far more insight into what I think this game is going to be. Will it be a fun game for you? And you can bet your whereas I am going to be doing a first impressions as soon as that becomes available, as soon as we're allowed to share some of that footage, and I will probably do some thoughts as well. Now, there's also a bunch of changes that's been announced, and that's not this video. Don't worry, I'm not going to bore you because it's a long fucking list. Like, it is a long list. If you don't believe me, allow me to show you. This is a stupidly long list, right, of just changes. Everything that you can think of is in here. I went through the whole thing, right? I looked through all of it. A lot of it is good. A lot of the changes I really do think is fundamentally in the right direction, but that's not really the point of today's video. That's not really what I'm here to discuss with all of you. I want to talk more specifically about the philosophy that goes into New World. And of course, we have to start right at the beginning. When New World was first announced to its major, audience, it was announced as a PvP-only game. Right back then, I was watching the trailers and I said, this looks amazing. This game looks like everything I want. It's got mystery. There's a lot of story there. I really want to get into this world. But the PvP thing is going to drag it down. It is going ultimately to tank. Now, of course, they had a lot of people over to test the game internally. Some YouTubers were even invited. I believe Lazy Peon was among them. All of their feedback eventually shaped it so that they finally realized the PvP only angle really isn't enough to keep people playing. And there's a reason for it, right? Which these developers would have known if they spent any time actually playing MMORPGs. The vast majority of the player base are PvE players. It's not PvP players. And of course, PvE players can also be subdivided into your more hardcore raiders and dungeoneers, and then of course your casual audience, which is almost always the major audience in every single MMO. There are more casual players than any other sort of player in a game. So your game can't just focus on one portion of that player base and then also coincidentally be the smallest portion of that player base. So that was a fundamental flaw that they realized pretty early on, and they started adding more PvE things to it. Now, right now, they've added 6 new dungeons to the game, and I believe more dungeons coming. I think they're also working on some raids, so really max level stuff for players to actually engage and get into. And if those things work, that's going to be amazing. I just want to point out, and hopefully Alex will have some footage on the screen for you, what this new raid actually looks like, but it is very Dark Soul-esque. The mechanics that those bosses have, the mechanics of the mobs, you really have to be paying attention. Now, if they can build raids in much the same vein, that's going to be off the hook. It's going to be really amazing. But just the initial sort of philosophy really already left me with a lot of red flags about this team and just how much do this team actually understand about the MMO industry. Now, before we continue with all of the red flags, let me be clear on a couple of things. There are things that I absolutely adore in this game. Things like crafting and the amount of effort and sort of thought that's going into crafting. Crafting does appear to almost be an entire game within the game. You have specific crafting gear. All gear that you craft really does go to the crafting mechanic, right? It will help you craft faster, craft more, things like this. So crafting is a big part of this game, and with the town system where you level up a region based on the town that you're in, a lot of the times you will get quests to go gather certain materials to help the rebuilding efforts, and this is all part of the mini game that crafters will be playing. So at least from a casual perspective, and that's usually where crafters are mostly centered, crafting is a good it's a good thing to have in the game. Is crafting going far enough? Probably not. There is some problems with crafting gear literally only being worthwhile for crafting stuff, which I don't necessarily think is the right way to go about it. But again, we have to get our hands on the game to test all of these things and see if this is actually how everything, sort of progresses. The other thing that's lovely about this game is the graphics, the aesthetics. I played the beta test or the stress test way back when, I think this was last year somewhere, where they did that, and I loved the aesthetics of the game. It looked absolutely amazing. But that's really where my praise for this game ends. Yeah. to say that's the only praise that I have. It's just from what I saw during the stress test and everything following that, there is a lot that this game has to prove to me. For example, the combat system, from a philosophical standpoint, complete dog shit. More importantly, and they have now decided to rework the combat entirely. So when we get into the closed beta, I'll be able to say more definitively if they actually fixed the combat. The combat was ridiculously slow, unresponsive. You couldn't cancel animation. So if you were in the middle of an attack, you were doing that attack. Even if you had to block or roll out of the way, fuck you, you are casting this. Yeah, but I'm almost dead. Cast. But I'm almost dead. Cost, you motherfucker. That's literally, the game was just forcing you to do the one thing that you right now couldn't do because you were trying to do other things. So the game really just felt miserable. They had this whole weapon swap mechanic, which on paper, really cool. So the way you build your class here is you really build your weapon, right? So you get a staff, and the staff has access to a lot of abilities and a lot of talent points that you have to spend to build out your weapon the way that you want to build it. And then once you've built out this weapon, you have access to the abilities of the weapon, and you can have up to 3 weapons. Again, we'll have to see if the combat has changed in any way, shape, or form, but the whole point of the game, the philosophy, was that you would switch between weapons to ultimately chain costs, because if some of your abilities is on cooldown, then of course you go to the other weapon, and then that weapon has all of its abilities available. Of course, that's not how it worked at all when you finally got your hands in the game. For some weapons, the cooldown was shared, right? So if you had one ability on cooldown, the other weapon would have that ability on cooldown as well. It was really a miserable feeling system. And not to mention, the worst part of this was actually, now a lot of that could have been bugs. I'm not saying that beta tests don't have bugs, but that was the problem at that time. What wasn't a bug, however, was the incredible global cooldown. When you swapped from one weapon to the other, there was like a 2-second global cooldown before you could cast anything. Like, the weapon would be completely unusable until 2 seconds later, when you could finally, use the weapon, which just made the game feel really bad. But this is where we get into what the philosophical decisions was, because it's clear that whoever designed the combat did not talk to the people designing the encounters, because the mobs were not on this global cooldown. The mobs were attacking incessantly, and you were standing there with this robust, very fucking limiting combat system trying to stay alive. The amount of times I died, because at the time I had a flame staff, a healing staff, and I had a gun. Right? And so the idea behind my build was I will do damage, and then I will use some of my CC, and then I can switch to my healing weapon to actually heal me, right? So that if I'm taking damage, I can stay alive. The problem is that you're almost always trapped in these animations that you can't get out of, and when you can finally swap to a different weapon, everything goes on a global cooldown, and once the global cooldown is off, now you have to cast your heal, but you've just been hit by 20 different fucking mobs from literally every direction, and you dead. Right? So that felt miserable. So really, the fact that they announced that there's a brand new combat system and that they've now, sort of changed the combat system in many ways, I'm really going to have to test it out, because from a philosophical standpoint, it's clear that they had a different vision from the start of the game. And that's a problem, because I don't see those visions generally changing. Dark Souls-esque kind of combat is a fun idea. I do not think that it is necessarily executable in an MMO. You have people with lag, you have people with high latency, you have people with bad computers, you have so many sort of ins and outs within an MMO that would affect that type of playstyle. Now, I'm not saying it can't work, but they would have to work on making it more fluid, making it more fun, and also just increasing the learning scale that players have to engage with, so that new players and casual players can actually be caught up on what this combat system ultimately is. And finally, before we get to the conclusion of the game, I want to talk about what is arguably the most important thing for me when it comes to an MMO, and that is storyline. I'm a massive story player. I love RPGs. I'm not a first-person shooting guy. I don't care for those games because they don't have stories. And if there's no story, I don't see the point in playing the game. Basically, I like playing games that's almost as if it's a book. that I'm reading. So story, very important to me. And the story of this game on a macro level, amazing. The promises of Eternum and the world that you're about to discover is insane. The deliverability of that, though, during the stress test was absolutely fundamentally fucked. And there's no better way to say it. That is the word. Okay, so first and foremost, they have announced now that they've done voiceovers for all quests. So all quests will be voiceovered. You're not going to be basically stuck reading a whole bunch of nonsense. Here's the problem, though. When I first played the game during the stress test, the quest text was nonsense. Like, complete and utter bullshit. Most of the quests taught you nothing about the world. It didn't tell you why you're doing certain things. You just sort of said to go do something, right? And then you go do this thing. You have no idea why you're doing this thing or what exactly happened for this thing to be happening and for you to actually be out in the world doing it. It was so bland, so boring. The quest design is absolutely horrendous in this game. It is legit a rinse and repeat. Every quest is the same. Kill 6 things, loot 3 things. Kill 6 things, loot 3 things. That is legit the questing that I've done in New World during the beta test, right? The stress test. So I'm so interested in the macro level story design of this game. But I'm afraid that even if it's voiceovered, if their quest text remained the same. Now remember, this was last year. Since then, maybe they didn't even have quest flavor text yet, and they didn't have the story fully fledged out yet. But even though they could have all of those things in there, the game really didn't seem to follow a very story-driven mode. It's not like Elder Scrolls Online or even World of Warcraft, where everything is about the story, or Final Fantasy even, where everything follows the story and you are sort of set on this magic adventure. That's not the feel that I got for the game. So from a pure lore perspective, this game has a lot of potential, but I don't know if this potential is in any way, shape, or form realizable with their current direction or the philosophy that they took from the beginning. Now again, a lot of things could have changed. We'll have to wait and see for the closed beta to see if these things actually change and feel better. I don't know. I can just give you the information that I have at hand at the moment, since no one really has been able to play this game and openly talk about it. So yeah, just something to be aware of. The story was absolute dog shit when I played it during the stress test. And then finally we get to the conclusion. Everything that we just discussed, everything that I just highlighted. There's a lot more that I could sort of nitpick on and sort of go, well, this could be better, this could be better. But that wasn't the point of this video. I wanted to tackle the 3 big things, the 3 things that stood out to me most as red flags, as warning signs, as things that people should be keeping in mind here. Now, are these things fixable? Of course they are. Every single one of these things can be fixed. Will they be fixed is the big question. And the reason I was saying from the beginning this is a focus on philosophy rather than on actual implementation is your philosophy will almost in every single regard influence your decisions whenever you make something happen. In World of Warcraft, I have learned the very hard way that their philosophy is rewards first and content second. So they come up with a bunch of rewards and then they figure out how to time gate these rewards so that it's not just given to you upon login. So the reward or the content really doesn't receive a lot of effort in any sort of way. What really is the rewards is really the thing that forces you into the content. That's a philosophical decision. So from here, it doesn't matter what Blizzard decides to do. None of that matters, because every single system they design will be fundamentally flawed based on the philosophy. And that's the point that I'm trying to make when it comes to New World. Their philosophy from day one was PvP centrist. I don't know if you can change a game fundamentally when it was started as a PvP game to then become a sort of well-rounded game, or if what we're going to end up with is sort of PvP feeling as if it was just sort of plopped on top, right? Here's the game. It's very PvP focused. Oh, and here's a couple of dungeons just for the people that want to bitch and moan about dungeons and no PvE content. So, you know, from a philosophical standpoint, the combat, same thing, can be fixed, but from a philosophical standpoint, there's massive massive disconnect between the encounter designers and the actual people designing the classes, which I don't know if that can be solved just based on the fact that it launched in that state or it went into a beta stress test in that state. So this is really why I'm making this video and why I'm saying really stem your enthusiasm. Sort of guard your hype. Go into this game with both eyes open and know that shit can change on a dime, right? And you have to be willing to admit that this is a failure and then walk away, because that's the only way this game is going to be fixed to eventually be a good game, is if players say, well, no, sorry, mate, this is a shit game. The way you made it, just didn't like it. So yeah, just sort of be careful. Quick update here, and I realized that Alex, my editor, is going to kill me. This video was made almost a week ago at this point, where we started putting the video together and started adding all of the different sections and sort of reiterating on them. The video is now complete, but of course in the last few days, there's been huge developments around the cash shop. So before we even talk about this, I just want to make this clear. At the time of recording this video, I had none of this information. New World and Amazon have not yet become complete scumbags with their game. So just very quickly, New World is now sort of, as far as I'm concerned, on my radar of shittiest games for 2021, mainly because of their cash shop. They've already played their hand. They've shown that they're going to make the game arbitrarily stupid and unfun so that you'll buy the fun stuff in the cash shop. They're sort of... They've been finicking around with wasted XP, but then they're going to allow boosts to wasted XP to be bought from the cash shop. They've also spoken about battle pass systems that will include multiple cosmetics into a single package for people. So at the end of the day, the cash shop right now is a mess. It's been met by many in the community as an absolute dog shit idea. And Amazon themselves knew that this was a bad idea at the start of it. So just to be very clear, they knew that what they were doing was wrong. That's why they put it in behind an NDA to ensure that people couldn't talk about it. Because they knew it was going to get met by a lot of resistance. Hopefully they listen. Hopefully they pay attention to the outrage. So far, they've proven themselves to listen to the player feedback. However, it seems like if you look at what they're doing on Twitter, they're defending themselves. They are sort of on the verge of doubling down on the cash shop and the way that they want to release the cash shop. All I'll say for this section of the video, at least talking about the cash shop, if the game launches with the cash shop as they intended to be, this game will be a game that no one should play and no one should even spend their money on. If during any part of this video you disagree so heavily with me, you can join me on Twitch, link in the description down below, to tell me straight to my face just what a big fuck up I am and how wrong I am about New World. And of course, if you love everything I say here, consider becoming a patron. Literally, link in the description down below. Patrons get a podcast every single week. They get behind the scenes footage, just sort of me talking to them and coffee videos and stuff like that. So Patreon really is the place to be, you know, if that is your thing. And then to all of the patrons, Twitch subs, and the YouTube channel members, thank you so much for joining us. I literally wouldn't be here without you, so I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your support. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, my name is Aklon, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out, fam.